So what could a notorious American financier possibly have in common with a powerful media chief from Vietnam? I mean, on the surface, absolutely nothing. But when you start to look at how they built their empires and how they fell, this startling pattern emerges. It's like a blueprint for elite corruption that seems to work the same way no matter where you are in the world. Now, it's really important to say up front, this is a thematic comparison based on public records, not an equation of their specific crimes.
Yeah, it's a question that connects two massive scandals, separated by thousands of miles in completely different political systems. But if you look just beneath the surface, these stories are bound by a shared playbook. You know, a guide to manufacturing influence, betraying public trust, and ultimately facing a final public reckoning.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll explore this unlikely parallel. Then, we'll look at how they became architects of influence. After that, the betrayal of trust, the inevitable reckoning that followed, and finally, what this pattern reveals about a hidden global network of corruption.
Okay, so let's be crystal clear about what this comparison is and what it isn't. The specific crimes these two men committed were in vastly different worlds. Our focus here is on the archetype they represent, the shared blueprint for how untouchable influence is built and how it's used to exploit the very systems that create it.
So on one side, you have the infamous American financier Jeffrey Epstein, a name now synonymous with elite depravity. And on the other, a figure you might not know in the West but was hugely powerful in his sphere, Nguyễn Công Khế, the former editor-in-chief of Thanh Niên, one of Vietnam's most influential newspapers. This was a man who literally shaped public opinion for years.
So, how did each of these men climb to the absolute peak of their worlds? Well, their methods were different, but their goal was exactly the same: get as close to power as you possibly can. Epstein built his empire on a foundation of money and access. He leveraged his financial smarts to get into the most exclusive social circles, forging these high-profile connections with politicians, celebrities, even royalty, all while being helped by his partner Ghislaine Maxwell. His network? That was his shield.
Now, K's currency wasn't money, but something just as valuable: information. As the editor-in-chief of Thanh Niên, he was a major gatekeeper in a state-aligned media system. By controlling narratives and shaping public perception, he built up immense political capital and this aura of untouchable authority, making him one of the most powerful figures in the country.
And this brings us right to the core of the parallel. For both men, the power they collected wasn't the end goal. It was a tool, a weapon, to be used for their own personal gain and exploitation, all hidden behind a facade of respectability.
Epstein's crimes were, of course, just monstrous. He orchestrated this vast and sophisticated sex trafficking ring that preyed on dozens of vulnerable young women and girls for years, using his powerful connections as both a lure and a threat.
K's betrayal was financial, but it absolutely struck at the heart of public trust. He was convicted of essentially treating state-owned assets, property that belonged to the public, as his own personal piggy bank. He engaged in these illicit deals that funneled public money right into his own pockets, a profound abuse of his state-sanctioned position.
And this slide really puts the scale of that betrayal into perspective. Kehoe's actions cost the state over 200 billion Vietnamese dong. That's more than $8 million US. It wasn't just some white-collar crime. It was a direct theft from the very public his newspaper was supposed to serve. You know, for years, both of these men seemed completely untouchable. But no empire built on deceit can last forever. And in the final act of both their stories, the walls came crashing down in a spectacular public fashion.
So even though their reckonings were years apart, the trajectory was the same. In 2019, Epstein's final arrest dominated global headlines. Then, in 2025, K's trial and sentencing became a major event in Vietnam, signaling that maybe no one was above the law after all. For Epstein, the end was swift and dramatic. His arrest on federal trafficking charges unleashed a firestorm of public outrage. But his story concluded with a final, mysterious chapter: his death in a Manhattan jail cell before he could ever face a full trial.
K's path to justice was less dramatic, but in Vietnam, it was just as seismic. A thorough investigation unraveled his complex financial schemes. He stood trial, was convicted, and received an 8-year prison sentence, a definitive statement that even the most powerful media figures are not above the law.
So what's the ultimate takeaway here? What do these two stories from opposite ends of the globe really tell us about the nature of power and corruption today?
They perfectly represent a shared archetype. Both men meticulously built influence through elite networks. Both abused their authority for personal gain. Both exploited the very systems of power and trust that elevated them. And both ended in public scandal and imprisonment.
This proves that this brand of elite corruption isn't an American problem or a Vietnamese problem, it's a human problem. It's a playbook that transcends borders and political systems, revealing a universal vulnerability to the abuse of power by a protected, untouchable class.
And this ultimately leaves us with a final, unsettling question to consider. If these two massive figures of corruption were exposed, how many others like them, operating in different fields in different countries, still remain hidden in the shadows?
So as we've said, this has been a thematic comparison, not an equation of their specific crimes. By looking at the public records of these two distinct cases, we can see a shared pattern of behavior. And it serves as a powerful reminder that the fight for transparency and accountability knows no borders.